Thank you for tuning in to the 28storms.com and Hurricane Tracker app tropical weather update on this Friday, October 21st. It may be the mid to latter half of October now, but the tropics are certainly not over just yet. In fact, it looks as though we will be dealing with a tropical cyclone in the northwest Caribbean within the next 3 to 5 days. Yesterday, we alluded to the possibility for tropical development over this upcoming weekend, and sure enough, now the Hurricane Center is giving the low-pressure area just to the east of Honduras a 60% chance of development within the next 2 days. Not to mention, we also have that area of low pressure to the east of the Windward Islands. That system is also being given a 20% chance of development within the next 48 hours. This afternoon's visible satellite imagery shows both of our systems quite well. It also should be noted that both of these systems are being classified as invests, simply meaning that the Hurricane Center is paying more attention to both of these systems and more models are being run on these storms. This is 96L invest, and over here to the east of the Windward Islands, this is 97L invest. So first, if we go ahead and discuss the storm over the western Caribbean, we can still easily make out the stalled frontal boundary that extends all the way from the western Atlantic into the southwest Caribbean, where we now have widespread, numerous convection just to the east of Honduras and Nicaragua. Now, fortunately, there are no signs of a closed surface circulation. However, this system will be in no hurry to move anywhere anytime soon, and over the next 48 to 72 hours, a surface low and surface circulation will more than likely develop as upper level conditions become more favorable. Now, if we go ahead and switch over to the water vapor, the first thing that may catch your attention is this large upper level low located over the central Atlantic to the east of Puerto Rico. Now, just to the south and east of this system, we are still seeing quite a lot of southwest wind shear, which is not boding well for the system just to the south, and development is going to be unlikely for that system over the next 3 to 4 days. And also just to the west of the upper level low, we see quite a lot of dry air over much of the central Caribbean. So although conditions in terms of wind shear are marginally favorable across the western Caribbean already, we are still dealing with a lot of dry air here to the south of Jamaica, and that is the main reason why we are not expecting development to be overly imminent within the next 24 hours. However, one important thing is going to happen over the next 3 or so days. This upper level low is going to get caught up by the westerly flow over the United States, and it's going to shift more toward the northwest. So along with it, we have this trailing upper level ridge down here over the central Atlantic, and over time the models are showing this upper level ridge advancing more toward the west-northwest, and this is going to allow for a very favorable pocket of upper level ridging and moisture across much of the central and western Caribbean. Some of the models are even showing this tropical disturbance continuing to move westward along with that upper level ridge as it heads off toward Hispaniola, and the GFS was trying to develop this system as it nears Haiti. However, it's no longer doing that because as it gets into the central Caribbean, it's more than likely going to be absorbed by the more intense tropical system located just to the west of Jamaica by this point. So once again, the upper level conditions are already favorable in terms of the wind shear over the western Caribbean, but the dry air is the main inhibiting factor. This is the location of the upper level low. Just to the south, this is where we're seeing 30 to 50 knots of wind shear. But down toward the southeast here over the central Atlantic, that's where we both have favorable upper level winds and favorable moisture. This is a better look at the upper level ridge over the central Atlantic, and then as this upper level low, which you see right here, as this continues to move off toward the northwest, that is going to allow for this favorable pocket of upper level ridging and moisture to make it west-northwestward all the way across into the central and west-northwest Caribbean over the next 4 to 7 days. The latest low-level 850 millibar vorticity chart also shows both of our systems. The one over here near the Windward Islands isn't nearly as well defined as to be expected due to the wind shear, but look off just to the east of Honduras and Nicaragua, we do see a fairly healthy vorticity spike, and I am confident that this system is going to become more prominent here over the coming weekend. Now let's go ahead and thoroughly review all of the latest available model guidance. This is the latest 12Z CMC model shear forecast for the entire Atlantic Basin. We can see the upper level low located here just to the northeast of Puerto Rico. This is Puerto Rico, and we see the strong red colors and purple colors are indicating very significant vertical wind shear, and as we see that it's going to persist here, but the upper level low is beginning to shift northward out ahead of all of these westerly winds over the east coast of the United States. This is the favorable upper level ridge moving westward over the central Atlantic, and we also see an increase in ridging already here to the south of Jamaica. But over time, both of these upper level ridging features are going to merge together over much of the central and western Caribbean. And finally, by day 6, we have a very significant upper level ridge located well to the south of Cuba, and this is over some of the warmest waters in the Atlantic Basin. So hopefully whatever tropical system that does develop, hopefully it doesn't do so directly underneath this upper level ridge, or else we could be in for some rather significant development. So with that said, what is the CMC showing in terms of a forecast track? Well, this is the latest 850 millibar initialization, and as we advance this through day 6, notice that the storm stays on the western side of where we saw the upper level ridge, so the CMC does not show quite as intense of a system as we could be dealing with if it took a slightly more easterly track. Nevertheless, by day 6, it's sitting over Cancun, Mexico, more than likely as a tropical storm. Now the following is the latest 850 millibar GFS vorticity forecast, and before I advance this, I would just like to mention that the shear forecast being advertised by the GFS is fairly similar to that of the CMC model. But the one key difference is that the GFS is taking the system a little bit more toward the east and therefore keeping it over the northwest Caribbean a little bit longer, and eventually by day 7 it's showing it passing over western Cuba. But since it takes that slightly more easterly track, the storm is a little bit more intense, more than likely due to the fact that it's got a little bit more room over water, plus it's a little bit closer to the center of that upper level ridge. Now the following is the latest GFDL model forecast, but before I set this one into motion, viewers should know that the GFDL has had the tendency to overdevelop many tropical systems so far in this hurricane season. But with that in mind, as we advance this all the way through day 6, the model is also showing a northwest track, and as we go into day 5, this is a rather potent hurricane. We're talking about a Category 2, borderline Category 3 hurricane here, sitting between the Yucatan and Cuba. Switching over to the HWRF, the HWRF has similar problems compared to the GFDL, but nevertheless, this is the HWRF forecast for the next 5 days, and the forecast is nearly identical to that of the GFDL by taking a developing hurricane northwest in the general direction of western Cuba. Next up is the 12Z run of the UK Met model. The UK Met model is not the most accurate of model guidance, but we still like to use it from time to time. As we go into Saturday and Sunday, we most definitely have development into a tropical depression or tropical storm located here just to the east of Honduras and Nicaragua. And as we go into the early part of next week, this is now Monday morning and Tuesday morning, we have a developing tropical storm or potentially even a minimal hurricane to the east of the Yucatan Peninsula. And by Wednesday morning, it's continuing to intensify as it heads west-northwest or northwest in the general direction of Cancun, Mexico. And finally, this is the 12Z ECMWF model forecast. The European is definitely one of our better models. And as we go into Saturday and Sunday, we definitely have a weak tropical depression or tropical storm beginning to move a little bit to the north here, just to the east of Honduras and Nicaragua by Monday. And we are missing a frame, so this is now Wednesday morning. We have a developing tropical storm or a minimal hurricane sitting just to the southeast of Cozumel, Mexico. Now, there's a couple things that could happen in the extended 4 to 7 day forecast period. Some of the models are showing a temporary return of ridging here across the southeast United States. This could induce a slight more westerly track. I'm talking about a west-northwest to northwest motion that could only last for about a 24-hour period, because with time we're definitely going to see a return of trophy conditions over much of the central Gulf Coast. So not only should all interests in the western Caribbean monitor this storm, but also residents here across the Bahamas and southern Florida, you guys should also be paying attention to this system, because there is that chance that it makes that recurvature out ahead of that trough and then turn northeast into Florida and the islands of the Bahamas. Again, this is really getting far out there, and it's really uncertain with regards to what the system may or may not do. So the bottom line is to stay up to date with the latest official forecasts and updates from the National Hurricane Center, and has been the case all along with this hurricane season 2011. 28storms.com and the Hurricane Tracker app will remain supplementary sources with the most detailed information available, and we will be providing more updates like the videos you just saw, including more discussions available at 28storms.com throughout the remainder of the weekend and into next week.